And here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Bet Like No One's Watching podcast. My name is John Sullivan. I'm glad to be joining you again after 2 weeks off to discuss basically my betting journey plus all things gambling Twitter. It's the midsummer's edition of the podcast, so ladies and germs, people of the degenerate persuasion, we've reached the halfway point of the year. So, of course, it is time for us to deliver our State of the Bankroll address. My fellow bettors, from my mouth to your ears, I'm here to tell you that the state of my bankroll in 2022 is very robusto. I'm coming off back-to-back futures winners in the NBA and college baseball. I've been able to reinvest winnings into the NFL, college football, and Major League Soccer markets, and I filled out my Major League Baseball futures portfolio pending the divisional matchups in the playoffs. In other words, we need to see who survives the wild card rounds and makes it to the divisional rounds if I'm going to hedge. But other than that, I think I'm going to stand pat on my baseball futures. I have reaped immediate dividends, turning over my winnings in CFL and Aussie rules. Before you sample size bro me, I understand the sample sizes are small, but I've gone 18-3 in Aussie rules this season using the squiggle model, and 10-2 to date in CFL. CFL has been mostly totals, which have been lined way too low, in my opinion. Books have adjusted. They're starting to adjust to the totals in the CFL. But once again, there's tons of value. The rule changes certainly increase the number of field goals. And I still feel like anything that's a low 40s total, like 42-ish, is an insta over. You know, it's just on principle, bet the over. Obviously, unless there's considering factors like injuries or bad weather, but assuming that the teams are putting their best team out there, that most games should go over that number. So as we approach the Home Run Derby and preseason football, my advice to you is to either concentrate on your niche or prepare for the bigger markets. Obviously, huge markets like NFL, football regular season game lines are already out. You can look around for some value. So if you want to concentrate on that big market where you're going to have tons of resources and data, now is the time to maybe get some good lines. Not to mention that hockey and basketball will shortly be upon us. You might start thinking about NBA futures already for the next season. I think bright days for bettors lie ahead. Bankrolls are growing and edges abound. So my fellow degenerates, please carry on. And thus ends my State of the Bankroll speech. In all seriousness, I want to talk about a few things. I want to take a minute and say how exciting the CFL season has been so far. Even though the Western Division is continually waxing the booty of the East Division, there have been several multi-score comebacks already in games. I even saw this past week the first onside field goal attempt of the season. If you don't know what that is, look it up on YouTube. It's a fake field goal where you kick the ball for a first down. There have been some new breakout stars in the CFL, and the Canadian quarterbacks Nathan Rourke and Trey Ford, although Trey Ford got hurt yesterday. Hopefully he'll be back soon, but very exciting player. And the return specialist Chandler Worthy in Montreal has already had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns this season. Very exciting player to watch. Montreal just fired their coach yesterday, and there's a shakeup there. And tonight, there's a great matchup between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the BC Lions in Vancouver. I think whoever wins this game has the inside track to the West. Obviously, Calgary Stampeders are undefeated, so all 3 of those Western teams are undefeated. and they're going to play each other 2 to 3 times. I haven't looked at the schedule off the top of my head, so I don't know who plays who more, but these are, I think the Bombers and the Lions are the top 2. I don't feel like the Stamps have had any really tough games yet. They've played Edmonton twice, and they're 4-0, so it remains to be seen. But all 3 of those teams are impressive. And the season's just getting started. So once again, if NBA Summer League or preseason NFL is not your bag, I recommend checking out the CFL. I've also been betting on MLS. It's kind of a numbers-driven thing, a lot of expected goal metrics and shot metrics. It's a high variance sport. You really have to shop for value in the soccer markets. I do feel like the three-way markets do give you some value on games where you have a definitive target of outcome. So not betting the double chance or not betting the draw no bet. I feel like betting totals and betting single outcomes of a three-way outcome. And that's actually taught me, betting MLS, to bet regulation time more in NHL. I'm going off on a little tangent here, but 28% of NHL games go to overtime. And, if you have an evenly matched up team and then one team's getting great odds to win, overtime included, you can also fire a regulation time tie and possibly sweep the bets. Always possibly a way to hedge if your team does happen to lose in overtime. So it's something to consider. Of course, the numbers have to be right, if you're modeling. And goalie matchups matter incredibly in that particular scenario. But three-way markets are very interesting. And sorry about that tangent. Let's just continue on with ongoing sports. I have not been able to watch as much Aussie footy as I would like, but I will say that there's about 6 weeks left in the season, and I feel like there's balance in the top 8. I feel like there's 2 teams that are clear-cut as the best 2, and then there's the top 4 and then the next 4. But there's about 6 teams competing for that 5 through 8 playoff seating. And I've been using this model, which is basically the model of models. It's crowdsourcing a bunch of other different models, and I've been lucky on some coin flips. I bet some teams that were projected at 55% to win, and most of those have gone my way. I think only 2 have not. 2 where I had a favorite that did not go my way. But boy, that's been a nice little boost to my bankroll, and I've invested a lot in futures, especially NFL futures and college football futures, and these wins in Aussie rules have really just replenished my bankroll to where it was before I started investing in those futures. So the model does a great job determining the strongest plays each week, and I've said this in 3 straight podcasts now that you just put in the numbers in a Kelly calculator and it tells you if the bet's EV or not, and it's as simple as it can get to bet on it. And I honestly believe that if the fellow that does this squiggle model, if he applied that same mindset and data visualization to NFL, that he could have a product that people would pay dollars for. Like, that would be something that I would pay $149 a month, which is what unabated charges if you're not on an annual subscription. That it's that for because that you have no trouble getting down on NFL. So if you wanted to put 50,000 or 100,000 down in a week on an NFL game, you could do that. Obviously, I don't have that kind of money, but the point being is it would be completely worth it if you had significant trackable models that you could accumulate and weight and used to make sports betting predictions. It would be very, very valuable information. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of pro bettors that would do everything in their power to make sure that information never got out there. But the point is, Mr. Barry, who does the Squiggle model, puts it in a very easy-to-use format. And if somebody could capitalize on that data visualization, I think they would have a product that would become very popular. All right, so let's talk tennis for a second. I avoided Wimbledon, but I did. It's very interesting because for somebody who bets a lot of futures, I explained to all my friends I didn't do good at all. I didn't, cash anything in NHL. And I explained that Colorado Avalanche were the favorite all season long, and then they went out and won the cup. And for most bettors, that's not a good outcome. The good outcome is when somebody unexpected either wins it in the final or even gets to the final. Obviously, if you have a team like Cincinnati Bengals last year getting to the Super Bowl, well, if you had a future on them, you could have hedged your ticket and made a nice, tidy profit. So what I did was the opposite of what I always do, and I bet on Iga Swiatek to win Wimbledon. Of course, she hadn't really lost since February in pro tennis. I knew that grass wasn't her best surface, but obviously anybody who would be considered a top 10 challenger, obviously Serena Williams was coming back and she lost in the first round. Naomi Osaka has been battling personal issues and she's not playing. And even Jessica Pegula, who's a top 10 player, her mother is in the hospital, and it was uncertain if she was even going to play. And I just felt like Swiatek at plus 175 is what the best number I got on her to win Wimbledon was a good bet. And I didn't put a huge amount of money on it, but, it was probably like I would consider 3 units of what I bet on it. Like if I bet 1 unit on a game, I probably put 3 units on that. So that crashed and burned. She lost in, I think, the third round. And again, that's the downside of betting on a favorite to win, a future. And the Wimbledon future is a compressed future. The tournament, they call it a fortnight. It's played over 2 weeks. So it's not like it's tying up your money for that long. But if you are at the beginning of the season, if you had bet on the Yankees to win the World Series, you might have got 9-1 somewhere. And now they're obviously the favorite, and the Dodgers are the second favorite. The Dodgers, I think the highest that we've seen the Dodgers since the World Series ended last year was 6-1. But the point is, your money is better served if you want to bet the favorite, maybe holding off, and even if you end up paying a little more, if you pay, like right now the Dodgers are plus 450, maybe plus 500 if you're lucky. So you're paying a little bit more than plus 600, but you're not tying up your money as long. So that could be more of a personal consideration. That could be a bankroll issue or a bankroll crunch, depending on how you budget yourself. But the point being is, the majority of the time, betting that huge favorite, there's almost no advantage to doing it that early. If you want to talk about NFL, the Bills are the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now. They're pretty universally plus 650 the last time I looked. And they have an easy ride in the AFC East, which I actually think if you were going to bet a favorite, betting the Bills to win the AFC East at minus 200, I think I saw, or even if you got it at a better number than that, that would be easy money. I think if you want to tie your money up for the next 6 months, that is pretty easy pickings. But again, nothing's guaranteed, and you have to live with the possibility of losing, which is why it's a lot easier to live with that loss if you're betting on a 500-1 shot. If I'm putting $5 on the Arizona Diamondbacks to make the playoffs at 500 to 1. I actually got them at 1,000 to 1. But the point being, I'm not worried about the $5, as opposed to putting 3 units on one outcome. But I felt very strongly about that play, but it didn't work out. So we'll have to see. I really don't follow tennis regularly, but I do have a wager tomorrow morning on the semifinal. So we'll see how that goes. But very, very interesting tournament. I don't think it went to form, and hopefully the finals will be interesting. I do also want to take a minute and talk about the World Cup. I mentioned the World Cup in a previous podcast, and I have to admit I was this many years old when I realized that the World Cup is actually being played in November. It's usually played in the summer, but I assume because it's being played around the equator that they're going to play it over what we Americans call the holiday season in Qatar. And because it's only July and that's 5 months away, 5+ months away, the future market is going to be very sharp by the time it kicks off. And I'm not sure I will have much of my bankroll involved in the futures for the World Cup. I feel like there's more value in the NFL market, in the college football market, than the World Cup market. I certainly will bet some of the games, but there's going to be so much money in those futures markets that the lines will be super sharp by the time it actually rolls around. I do want to say that gambling Twitter has been pretty quiet for the last few weeks. Darren, what's his name, Ravel, popped off a few horrible betting takes, which is totally the norm. He talked about how odds should be one way, but the odds should be plus 250, but he betted it plus 160. That's the exact opposite of being sharp. He got dragged for that. Everybody else on Twitter is mostly tweeting a lot of football stuff. Seems like a lot of folks are vacationing. Our boy Rufus is golfing somewhere, or people are doing downtime staycations. I feel it myself, do what makes you happy, don't burn out. I've been taking it easy. There's not a lot to talk about. There hasn't been a lot of sports betting podcasts put out that have anything worth talking about. Circles Off has been dead. Bet the Process has been quiet. Spanky's been quiet. It's Three Donkeys has even been quiet. So they're supposed to be back, and now their first podcast back, I watched about 10 minutes of it, and they talked about how well off they were financially, and that just really turned me off, and I had to turn the podcast off. I wish those guys the best in whatever they do, but it really doesn't connect with me. So I'm hoping to get my podcast, my live stream Sportsbook Confidential podcast back soon. We're approaching NFL preview time. They're building a new studio nearby where I live. I'm waiting for that studio to go online, so I may record some episodes remotely. We're talking about doing maybe 4 episodes and previewing 2 NFL divisions in each episode. Speaking of which, I currently hold 8 NFL divisional futures and a few Super Bowl futures. And those of you that know me know that I like to go top down. When I mean that, it's actually bottom up, but I go with the longest shots first. I put my money down usually on the best values I find, and then work my way towards the favorites. And as I said before, talking about betting favorites and futures, there's no reason to bet much now. If you like Buffalo now at 650, they're going to be, even if they go undefeated, they're not going to be more than 400, 500 to win the whole thing. I mean, the AFC is just a monster conference this year. There's just too many. They could lose. I mean, getting the bye is huge in the NFL playoffs, but if you don't get a bye in the NFL playoffs, you could lose in any round. There's just too many good teams. Again, trades, injuries, suspensions, all that stuff's going to happen. We'll just have to wait and see. The other big topic in the world right now of sports and sports betting is the college football realignment. And I can really boil it down to two things. And they're very related. Number one, it's about streaming rights. And number two, it's about money earned outside the playoff system. So obviously, you have TV rights and you have streaming rights. And they have become separate issues. So, for example, the CFL sells TV rights to the U.S. and they sell streaming rights to the U.S. So ESPN Plus has the streaming rights, ESPN has the TV rights. So ESPN shows some games on the television and they show all the games on the streaming platform. And with all this conference realignment, there are all kinds of issues being raised over television contracts and streaming contracts. And I just saw on YouTube last night that the ACC is trying to void, or the ESPN is trying to void the ACC television contract because they're about to lose 4 teams to the SEC. The Pac-12 and the ACC are talking about merging. The Big 12 is growing. The Big 10 is growing. The SEC is growing. And it's all based on college football, TV money, and all of that. So it's interesting to talk about, but when it comes down to sports betting, not really impacting things very much, at least not for this season. I do enjoy college football very much. I enjoy watching it. I've never really done fabulous in the college football betting market. I guess I should say I've always done better in the NFL market. So for me, you know, I do like betting on the college football futures, but since there's little to no difficulty getting down on the NFL game, and I perform much better financially on the NFL game, it leaves me little incentive to really follow 130 some odd college football teams. There's 127 futures, about 130, I think, Division I teams right now, or playoff teams, a football bowl subdivision. But there's just no incentive to follow that many teams when you can follow 32 NFL teams and, you know, get more information, more data points, more coverage. People always say that the NFL is the most liquid market, which I believe. It's the most efficient market, which I will debate. But I don't think it's the toughest market to beat. I really don't. I feel like NBA is tougher to beat than NFL. And part of the reason is the NBA games. You're lucky if you get 24 hours to bet on the games, you know. And to bet any significant amount of money, and you can get totally screwed on lineup changes last minute. So you have to be a market watcher and be able to get out of a position as quickly as you've gotten into it. So where the NFL, you have a whole week, you know, to review the opening line, to set a target number for yourself, see if it gets there, see when the injury report comes out, if it moves in your direction or not. You're playing the guessing game on some injuries ahead of time, but that can create value for you. You know, your belief that teams will not only plan pregame but make adjustments in game, which is something I feel like the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, but was something that I feel like Sean McVay still lacks, that if somebody really gives him a bad first half, that it's very difficult for him to to change his scheming, whether this is by design or not. He's just one of those guys that says, beat me with what I put on the field. We're going to tell you what we're going to do, and you just have to beat us. So I think there are coaches that win more games because of their ability to adapt in game. And there's I think obviously having a player like Patrick Mahomes turned Andy Reid from a good coach to a great coach. But I think, with that tool of Patrick Mahomes, has gotten better at calling games and making in-game decisions. So, anyway, looking forward to NFL. So here's your middle of the summer episode. Just wanted to reach out and touch base with everybody. I hope you're having a great summer. I hope it's comfortable where you're living. We're in strange times. Shout out to Slay Dog, Slay America. The Slay abides for getting into the main event. Good luck to you, man. I'll be hitting the showers in your honor. So let's swipe left and finish this episode up. So hydrate, everybody. Use some sunscreen and bet size correctly. So until next episode, hope you tune in again. Take care.